So we have another one of those days where I can't see a darn thing because we have lots of sunlights coming straight in through the window. So I am just gonna do my thing and hopefully this will work right. I can see myself up just my hair, so I don't know how much of a hair I'm off. Okay. I'm Suzanne Ticklemeyer. If you know who I am, you know that I wrote for Pathos for a total of 10 years, critiquing evangelical, quiverful, non-denominational, fundagelicalism. I used to look at everything to do with it and point out how it wasn't very Jesus-y or Christian even. Point out the awful, non-biblical, extra-biblical parts. It's kind of what I'm still doing here. Taco Tuesdays means totalitarian, authoritative church organizations. So here we are. It's a Tuesday, and I'm still working on my book. I'm doing some edits and some rewrites because of a few things. So let me start with a few things. Let me just say, do not, do not go real life, harass, bug anybody I'm talking about today. That includes us. I will take that as a negative if people start doing that crap, and lately it's happened a lot. Um, Here's the thing. This is one of those things that I've had a very hard time talking about and working through. When I started writing my book, I was trying to write about the comedy things that happened because there were a lot of things that were truly very funny that happened, like the time the pastor fell through the ceiling like the Spider-Man. And I actually said, "Magnificent Spider-Man, Pastor." I was having myself a blast when he did that because he and I and a handful of people were in the church trying to decorate for Christmas. Because I'm artistic, that was one of the things they used to press me to do was to go in and decorate the church. So I would do it if I was able to, if I had some things going on. So not just church, Easter, anytime there was anything special, I was in there with the hot glue gun, with all the crap that was decorative, or saying, maybe you shouldn't do that. A good example of that was when they painted the youth ministry room and they said, okay, we want to paint red down here. We want to do an orangish yellow and then a gold, like flames going up. And I said, okay, this is how you do it. This is the kind of brushes, sponges, and things you will need to do it to gradually fade it up to the top to look like flames. And they totally ignored me. They put a stripe of red, a stripe of gold, a stripe of yellow, and it just looks stupid. But most of the time I was listened to there about that sort of thing. But today I want to talk about something important that they never listened to me about, and I got to witness so many people actually deal with this, and it was a problem. And one of the problems with going to those kinds of churches is everybody knows your business. That's number one. There's this thing they like to say they're praying for you, that they need to know what your prayer requests are so they can know how to pray for you. And many times what happens is you end up being prayer gossiped about. Isn't it terrible? Isn't it terrible that Dewey McDewerson has had a stroke? Can't see very well anymore. Oh, I wonder if that came about. Let's see, may have looked at prawn. How is that appropriate in any way? But things like that used to go down. I remember at one point, one of the ladies that I went to church with, I didn't know very well, came up with the same kind of cancer that I had at one point. And I actually they were praying over it and talking about it in church. And I told her and her husband as they were leaving one day, I said, when you start receiving the treatments, the chemo and the radiation, just reach out to me and I will tell you what to do. I will help you deal with this side effect because I used to get this side effect with chemo. What am I talking about? Chemo fee. Okay, so with chemo, a lot of times you will get not everyone gets this, not all the time, but sometimes the chemo comes out the bottom of your feet, and it's a poison you're putting in your body. Let's be really honest about that. And because the pores of your feet, the skin, the pores are large, it's not unusual to have painful bottoms of your feet where it's coming out. But excess is just coming out the bottom of your feet, destroying, wrecking the skin on your feet swell, they hurt, whatever. There are ways to deal with that, and many times it involves something like getting a I was looking to see, I don't have the right cream here. Um, usually what it takes is taking some sort of cream that is, I don't wanna say organic. I like organic stuff because I tend to react much less problematically with my allergies to things that are more natural. It's not saying I don't react at all, but I do it's minimal. I had a friend that had a company, and I'm trying to think what the name of it was. It wasn't Bag Bomb. Utterly Smooth. She had a company, family company named Utterly Smooth, where they made cream for milkers, hands, and for I think you could use it on the udders of cows. I don't remember. I use Bag Bomb too. Um, well, I used to. She had this company, and one of the things that helped with chemo feed is you could take that little container, you could stick it in the freezer, okay? You wouldn't freeze it, but it would get so cold, you could spread that on the bottoms of your feet, put on some very fluffy, soft socks, and it would help a lot. So I told her, I said, I'm going to gift you a pair of these socks and a tube of Utterly Smooth for you when you deal with the feet. And because I was in that environment where we were all telling each other how they should deal with stuff, I felt free to do that, which is stupid because in retrospect, that was the horrible thing to do. I should have just said, if you have a problem, you decide to go this way, you have a problem, let me know. And I may have some solutions for you instead of just jumping right in. Later that same day, her husband chased me down and said, how dare you mention traditional medical treatment to my wife with her cancer? We are gonna trust God 100% and pray for her healing, and I was like, "Okay, I'm not arguing with you about that, I'm not saying don't do that." But I remember thinking at the time, how very foolish, even though I didn't say it. Now, looking back with the benefit of having been out any number of years, I can see that, that was not my place to say that. I should have said, "If you decide to do this, let me know, I can help you out if you have problems." Instead of immediately going to, "Oh, when you have chemo and it starts coming out of the bottom of your feet, blah, 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 bring your socks." And his reaction, I have to look back and think that his reaction came out of everybody there telling him how he should treat his wife's cancer. We dealt with this hard when my husband had kidney cancer and we were going to our old Quiverful church. Now, we were almost out the door at that point, but not quite. Here's what happened, okay? And this is what I've been writing about recently. Let me backtrack a little bit. So when I started this book, it was all funny stories. Then it started moved into some ranting, and now I've started thinking about it. I am better, not bitter. I don't want to be bitter about these things. So I'm going back to the kind of semi-comedy, semi-understanding and unpacking what's going on without the ranty part. Well, when I started writing about this subject, I'm still pretty damn ranty. Because I was triggered again this week by my husband's new church that I'm not going to. Somebody told him, "Oh, you should go back to the States to have XYZ treatment for your cancer." Well, I had to tell him, "That's not even possible. That's not a treatment for cancer. That's a treatment for this other thing." And his doctor had to tell him the same thing, and it slowed down trying to pick an actual treatment because we've been having conversations with our doctors, with my husband, with myself. trying to figure out what we're gonna do because there's all these different options. And we finally did yesterday, finally come up with a solution that we're all happy with, that we're just gonna go with, and whatever happens, happens. And I feel total peace about that. But at my old church, it was that on steroids. When he had his kidney cancer, it's kind of a strange time. He was diagnosed because one Monday night, and my kids were late elementary school and middle school at the time, and one was away at camp and one was at home, and it was summer vacation. I was painting my daughter's room since she was away at camp as a surprise. So I'd painted all day and then was gonna pull him out, chug-a-lugged a whole lot of Benadryl and passed out, and my husband woke me up at, like, 1 AM and said, "I'm in agony, you gotta take me to the hospital." So I'm, like, driving like a zombie to him to the hospital. We get to the hospital, and he tells him, he says, "I'm having a kidney stone," because he's had them before. They ran all the tests, and then they pulled us aside, both of us, and said, "Well, yeah, you got a kidney stone, but when we ran the scan, it was like kidney mass." So he had a mass the size of his kidney right off his right kidney, and they said, "This is almost certainly cancer or a tumor. You have to go tomorrow morning to see the urologist, the town urologist." So we get out of there, like, at 4 or 5 in the morning, go home, sleep 2 or 3 hours, and we're at the urologist's office, who looks at the scans and says, "This is almost certainly cancer. So we're gonna run this test, this well, first we get the kidney stone out. Let's get the kidney stone out and run the test." So he schedules to take the kidney stone out in 3 days on Friday. This is Tuesday morning. Okay, I don't tell anybody up at the church what's going on except for the pastor and a few close friends who are all saying, "We're praying for you. We're praying for a good resolution for this." And that was good. I have no problem with that. If you wanna pray for somebody to be healed, knock yourself out. I know in the Bible it says when Jesus was healing people, he said, "You're gonna do this and greater." I'm not gonna argue the words of Jesus. I haven't seen much of that manifest on this side, but I have seen a few cases where people have been healed of some crazy things. So, I'm not totally dismissing that. I'm just thinking that places like Bethel that teach you can get a healing every time are doing a serious disservice to everybody. So, there's that expectation. Friends knew it was cool, it was good. Um, where it turned not cool and not good was Friday morning. He and there he was on the prayer list Friday because he was having the surgery. Friday morning, we took him in, not to our local hospital, but one a few towns over to get the surgery because that is where that particular surgeon did his surgery, even though he had an office in our town and an office in the next town over. So we show up, they get the kidney stone out, and it's a lengthy procedure. They had a lot of problems apparently, and Jim was all bloated up from God knows what and from not being able to, pass urine. It was a mess. So I got a call while I'm sitting in the waiting room. It was my son, my middle school age son, because I'd left him alone that day because this is a kid I know that would just want to flop down on his futon and play whatever video game he had. I don't remember what it was, what the system was at that time, what type of Sega or Xbox or who knows what. I never paid much attention to that. Uh, so I knew he was just gonna park himself on his futon in front of his TV and play this game all day, and he was going to emerge just in time to nuke a few bagel bites and that sort of thing. So I felt pretty confident that I could leave him alone for 4 or 5 hours and he would entertain himself and not get in trouble. So he's calling me to say, "Hey, mom, Mrs. Cotton is here and she wants me to go hang out with her kids for the afternoon." And I knew the Cottons pretty well, so I said, "Yeah, okay." I wasn't real crazy about the Cottons because we had already had some interactions that weren't great, and I had backed away from them for a number of reasons. But I knew my son was good friends with their 3 sons. So I said, "Okay, go. I'll be back with your dad probably around 5," they're telling me. So I get home at 5 o'clock. Jim is out of his mind on the pain medication they gave him to do the surgery and out of his mind on whatever they gave him to get us home. So I get him upstairs, I get him settled in our bedroom, and I go downstairs. I was gonna run to the pharmacy and pick up his prescription. Mrs. Cotton shows up with all 4, not 3, but 4 of her boys, and, her 4 boys, and starts to pigeonhole me and try to ask me 10,000 trillion different questions about what was going on with my husband. And I was not in a mode to be able to answer me those questions. There was a whole lot of me going, I don't know. I don't know what the future holds. I don't know what happens. I must have said my his surgeon's name at that point because she was asking me all these questions and I was not able to answer any of them. And I was already stressed out. And it was one of those situations. So she said she brought my son home just long enough to pack a bag because she wanted him to spend the night. And I said, "Fine, let him spend the night," thinking that was probably the best thing ever. While all this was going on, her 4 sons were rolling wild in my house and kinda trashing it, and I wasn't really picking up on that because I was in that weird little head zone. She left, okay, and I discovered that the sons had hauled a bunch of crap out. The eldest, who was significantly impaired, he was, like, at that point, I think 18, and he had the mentality of about an 18-month-old child, had drug out my Christmas ornaments from my storage place upstairs. Don't ask me how he got in, I have no idea, and had smashed a bunch of my Christmas ornaments I had bought at the Christmas market in Nuremberg when we lived in Germany. So I was pretty upset. It was an upsetting time. So I went I thought, "Okay, son is taken care of, daughter's at camp, husband's upstairs napping. Perfect time to run out and get prescriptions filled." So I did that. I ran out and got prescriptions filled. We were just a couple blocks from the pharmacy. Came back, and my husband's very upset. And I said, "What's going on?" He said, "Well, Tom Cotton called me, and he said that Doctor So and so was his doctor when he had his vasectomy, and now his junk hurts all the time. So I'm upset because I'm using Doctor So and so." So he was really, really, really freaking out. And the best thing I could do was what I did when we first started dealing with Doctor So and so, which was go to the Virginia licensing website and look up his medical license and how many cases had been filed against him for malpractice, all of that, and show my husband that he had a very clean record and a high rating. So he calmed down after I showed him that. The very next morning, I went to pick up my son from the Cotton's house. Picked up my daughter from the camp drop-off point, talked to more than a few people who knew my husband had cancer at that point, including the camp director, and just said, "Yeah," that's then just gave them very small answers because I didn't have answers at that point. And they all said, "Oh, we'll pray for you." And I thought, "Okay, great, we could always use prayer, right?" I go to pick up my son, and I have I guess she must have been like 10 or 11 at the time, daughter with me, and we go in the house, and Tom Cotton starts asking me questions I don't have answers to about my husband's medical status, and his wife is saying, "I'm sure it's stage 4," and she's saying all kinds of really crazy stuff. Tell him, I said, "Can you do me a favor?" And he said, "What?" I said, "When my husband is undergoing treatment, surgery, and when he is swacked out of his mind on pain pills, please don't call him up to tell him things about his doctor. Just don't do that." The surgery has happened. You doing that, all you did was agitate and upset him. His response to me was, "No bitch talks to me like that." He chased me from the house with an upraised fist, like he was going to beat the you know what out of me. I ran, my 2 children ran, we ran for the car, and had he tried to prevent me from leaving, I would have run him over. I was that kind of frightened. This guy had a volatile temper, and I knew he had a volatile temper, and knew he had a volatile temper. And so we left, went home. I had not been in the door more than a few minutes when my husband started yelling at me, okay? Tom called him up and said that I had shown up and been physically aggressive and picked a fight with him, and that he had to defend himself. The kids and I, we let my husband know immediately that's not what happened. That yes, there was a raised fist, but it wasn't any of us. And I just asked him not to tell you crap about his surgeon. Let me tell you something. I hope Tom's junk hurts him to this day. That's all I can say because he was a jack. You know what? So that's what I mean when I say they try to tell you what to do. So that summer, I actually, at that point, our pastor stepped in because at that point I had people telling me what to do about this. Oh, put him on an all carrot juice diet. That'll kill it. You know, if he hadn't been doing X, Y, and Z, he wouldn't have this. Um, you need to have prayer at this place. You need to have elderberry syrup. You need to put onions in his socks. I mean, just ridiculous things. Rubbing his back with black salve. And I started to kind of have the same meltdown as the guy who, when I said, "Hey, when you have chemo, I'll bring you some Utterly Smooth and some socks, some very comfortable socks." So I started having that kind of a meltdown, and the pastor had to intervene. And that was not the only time I witnessed that. I witnessed that again and again and again and again and again. Every time somebody had an ailment, somebody else would tell them, "You should do this." That's one of the things about these taco churches that is just true is there is no boundaries whatsoever. Everybody feels like they have the right to say whatever they want to say to you, and there's nothing you could say or do that is going to be right to satisfy them. I finally learned to say, "Thank you, I'll consider your words," rather than say F off, which is what I really wanted to say because none of this stuff is easy to walk through, and it's way less easy to walk through when everybody starts telling you that you're doing everything all wrong and that you should be doing some nutty thing, and you know it's a nutty thing. Um, that's why I started writing this chapter because I was triggered again with my husband's cancer he has now with somebody from the new church saying, "Oh, go to America and have this laser surgery." Well, guess what? Laser surgery is not done for cancer. It's done for something entirely different. Same organ, different reason for that surgery, and it's not appropriate for cancer, according to Johns Hopkins and Mayo Clinic. And I trust Hopkins. I'm a patient there myself. I still go sometimes for my checkups at the National Allergy and Asthma Center there that they have at Bayview in Baltimore. Those guys are my jam. They're my superheroes. So, and also, I got to say, getting occupational therapy for my asthma was the best thing in the world, and that took place there. That was the first time that had been suggested. Best thing ever. So, if you're having health issues or you have a family member that has health issues and you're embroiled or enmeshed in one of these churches, don't be surprised if this happens. When you have a place where there's no boundaries and everybody thinks that they have a right to know all of your business and they have a right to sound off from the peanut gallery and tell you what you're doing wrong, don't pay attention to that. But it is a warning flag if you're at a church that's doing that. Just finished reading Shannon Harris's book. Shannon is the wife of Joshua Harris, who wrote I Kissed Dating Goodbye, who's now repudiated his book and said, no, 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 and pulled it from publication and all that. Shannon's now his ex-wife. And the name of her book, I think, don't quote me on this, was The Woman They Wanted. She talked about this, how she couldn't get treatment for depression because of this very thing, and how few people she let know what was going on with her when she was laying up in the bed, not telling everybody what happened to her and why she wasn't getting treatment and all of that. When you live in these places, you have these taco type churches where there's this kind of authoritarian control and everybody knows your business, everybody sounds off, and there are no boundaries. This is what happens. So it's a red flag. It's a huge red flag. So now you have heard one of the stories going in my book. I've got to find a way to make this redemptive because that's what I'm trying to do now with all the chapters. I'm trying to go back and take out anything that sounds bitter because I don't want my critics to toss at me, I'm bitter. Because I'm not bitter. I'm better. I'm not bitter. But at the same time, I kind of look at what I've done since I started at No Longer Quivering to now as being the person standing out there in the pouring rain and the darkness with with flares in front of where the bridge is out, saying, "The bridge is out, the bridge is out. Don't try to cross here." And still there are some that will insist on crossing and will end up dashed on the rocks below. I don't talk about these things to be, quote, gossipy, like critics love to toss at you. I do it more as a warning. This is where you can end up. I don't want anybody to end up where I ended up for all those years after I left. I had 2 incredibly horrible years after I left where I cried every single day. And in my small town, people were downright cruel to me every single day because of the fact that I had left my faith community for the Methodist Church. You would have thought the way that they acted that I had left to go ride the goat backwards and throw myself down naked on the pentagram. And it wasn't anything like that. I left for another church. The pastor of the Methodist Church was smart enough to just let me sit on the pew and recover for a while, which is the thing I needed more than anything in this world. And it helped a lot. It helped to be in a steady place with steady people that weren't just so awful of human beings that didn't have no boundaries. It was the right place, the right time. Okay, you guys, I'm gonna go. Have a wonderful Tuesday, and I will see you on Friday with a book review of Shannon's book. Love you.